Welcome back everyone, as we're diving into Great League with my best teams video. This time we're gonna have it alongside Ultra League and Master League for the next week rotation and the week after that with another special cup. So today I'm gonna focus into Great League and of course we're gonna have my best teams video with more than 10 teams to showcase. So starting off with the first team showcase, and we're gonna have a Lantern team. Lantern is still in the meta, but this time with Water Gun you can utilize it much better. So with this team you get access to a lot of coverage against those grass types with your backline to protect your Lantern, and of course in no time you can see that either Annihilate or Mandibuzz can emerge as solid closers depending on the situation. So we're gonna have a pretty strong team as you can see here, and we're gonna skip the meta scoreboard because all we care about when we're talking about PvP is gonna be the potential threats. These are the core breakers and the things you need to be afraid of with this team. So you can see here we still have Lantern, Mandibuzz, Annihilate, while on your left these are all the core breaks. So I guess that some Pokemon like Como, Florges and Goodra are not gonna be solid core breakers. You can always play around them, but the only solid one that I could find is Altaria. So Altaria is gonna be a Pokemon that has access to Dragon Breath with a lot of bulk to support it. So I guess that using an Annihilate version of Ice Punch might actually fix this threat. You have access to Pokemon like Mandibuzz, Annihilate at the back, and also you need to be afraid sometimes of Charmer. So this is why Wigglytuff is over here. But if you can play this team correctly and draw out with your Mandibuzz most probably that fairy type out of the way, Annihilate then will emerge like the perfect closer for your team, and most probably you have nothing else to worry about. Into the next team showcase now, and we're having a Registeel up in front, followed up by Double J. Jellicent and Jumpluff are gonna be absolutely awesome as a solid core, while Registeel can lead effectively this team. You can already tell that this line requires a little bit of extra strategy, because once again we're gonna head into the core breakers, and you can see that something like Galvantula can actually be a core breaker. This is mainly because of the electric typing. What I recommend to do on that situation is to stay in there with your Registeel, do whatever you can with your Zap Cannons, and later on try to finish it off with your Hexes or the Fairy Wind so that you can farm some extra with the other two Pokemon. However, what I also like about this team is gonna be the synergy that it has. Registeel is basically afraid of Mad Boys and Fighters, while the backline can easily protect your Reggie from those two threats. I really like the synergy. There is a lot of bulk on this team, some pretty deadly nukes for the opponent like Zap Cannon, Fox Blast, Shadow Ball, or even something like, I don't know, an Energy Ball from Jumpluff. This is looking absolutely awesome, and you can always count on this team to emerge victorious pretty much against anything on Great League. Now we're moving on into a Swampert team with Skarmory, and to my surprise a Wigglytuff. When I was building this team I started off with Swampert and Skarmory like a solid core that it is, and most probably I was about to add something like a Shadow Drapion, but with a recent rise of Annihilate and Poliwrath, Shadow Drapion isn't that safe anymore, but Wigglytuff can absolutely be awesome. So when you're leading with Swampert, most probably you're afraid of those grass types, and I think that the only grass type that is gonna be kinda bad for you is gonna be something like a Shadow Victreebel or Venusaur, and these are gonna be the only core breakers that I could find. So PvP suggests core breakers like Mantine, like Pelipper here, but I still think that with proper rotation you can emerge victorious even up against them. So I guess that the poison grass type Pokemon are gonna be mainly your main threats. So what I recommend doing on that situation is to basically sacrifice your Swampert while you still have your Wigglytuff around. However, against Shadow Victreebel, most probably they are gonna have something like a Bastion at the back, so you might want to aggressively switch out on your Wigglytuff at most situations to bait out the steal, finish it off with the combined efforts of Charm and Hydro Cannons from Swampert, and most probably Skarmory will have nothing else to fear with 2 shields remaining at the very end, while your opponent still has to sacrifice at least a shield if they want to have any chance up against you. So this team has high risk but still high gain, so it is all up to you to use it effectively, but I think that Wigglytuff really adds in there like a perfect safe pick Pokemon, because it can draw out certain things that Skarmory is afraid of, and of course then Skarmory without those certain things into the opponent's line can easily emerge victorious. Into the next team showcase with a Galarian Stunfisk team. How often do you see that anymore? Stunfisk returns as a solid pick for Great League this time, and I really like it in the meta. It has a pretty fine place. Serperior and Mantine at the back. You already know about these two Pokemon, how safe they can be, but Mantine is afraid so much of those electric types. And this is mainly why Lucario can emerge here like a perfect core breaker for this team. It has access to fighting moves like Force Palm and Counter for your Galarian Stunfisk, and carries some pretty nice charge attacks for coverage against your backline. Both Thunder Punch and Blaze Kick can do severe work to your team. Well, this team doesn't have any other severe weaknesses. You can always count on Serperior, such as an aggressive switch for example, in order to draw out something like an Alola Sandslash, something like a Skarmory, so that Mantine can emerge like a very nice closer for your team. But Lucario really has pretty much quite what it takes to destroy you down. However, there is a catch. Lucario is kinda glassy, so you can always count on it with a little bit of synergy to emerge victorious even up against a Pokemon like this, especially when shields are up. So use this team to your own caution, but you are not gonna regret it. It is pretty strong and of course kinda safe against the entire meta, because Lucario, well, it is not gonna be around that much. Now with Gligar having a Shadow Form on Go Battle League, I guess that this is a perfect team for it. We're gonna use it with Registeel and Sableye. This team gets all Bs on PvP, and besides that, well, we're gonna have a lot of action on the core breaking stuff. But you can see no time that you can also count on those core breakers to destroy them down with a little bit of extra synergy as well. So the only severe threat that I could find with this team when leading with a Gligar on Shadow mode is gonna be Azumarill, and yes, Azumarill will be around. So the main strategy that I want you to follow is to aggressively switch out on your Sableye when you're facing something like an Azumarill, so that Sableye can still lose to that play rough. However, by shielding once, you can absolutely get the chance to have a win scenario against Azumarill if you can land that return. And even if you don't, well, this is still gonna be fine. Most probably they are not gonna have another fairy type at the back. It would not make any sense at all, because they could be severely weak to other threats. So I guess that Sableye against an Azumarill lead can be a pretty safe pick. If you want to have a much safer environment and you are afraid kinda of Azumarill and you see it too often, lead with Sableye, and even up against the fairy type, stay in there. I mean against Azumarill or Tapu Fini, because up against a Charmer you definitely want to switch out on your Shadow Gligar. This team is pretty safe to run, especially with Gligar and Sableye being two of the safest Pokemon that you can actually use, while Registeel will stay as a solid closer for this team. Now we're having a Feraligatr team with Charjabug and Annihilate at the back. This team is so colorful, it has a lot to offer for the meta of Great League. It doesn't get quite the marks on PvP, but you can already tell that you got a ton of coverage. Whenever I see Lickitung as a core breaker, I'm always like, okay, this has to be a soft one, right? It doesn't matter at all. Swampert, not that much of a big deal either. You can already tell that X-Scissor, counters, or the back-to-back Hydro Cannons can still do severe damage to a Swampert, so same goes for Sableye or even something like a Pidgeot. This team pretty much has quite what it takes, but its only weakness can be its fragility, because it is gonna need some shields in order to work, and sometimes those two are never gonna be enough. However, with this team you can always rely on your charge attacks to be extra useful. You can get there at a fairly good pace, so that you can always choose your closer for any battle, because this team really lives up to its potential. I think that Feraligatr on Shadow mode can be much better if you have it at the back, while up in front a regular Feraligatr can be much better for this team because of that extra bulk. So for its second charge attack, do not go for crunch, feel free to use your Ice Beam, you're gonna need it especially up against those grass types when you return into the battle with your Feraligatr. Into the next team showcase now with a Quagsire on Shadow mode. When I was trying to build this team on PvP, I was thinking, okay, Quagsire is a Shadow Pokemon that has access to Aqua Tail, but at the same time it still remains a Mud Boy, so Skarmory might actually be the perfect comrade for it, and I gave it a shot. But with Aqua Tail it doesn't perform that well, but with Mud Bomb it can do much better and give you extra coverage against those steel types, which is absolutely crucial for Skarmory. Not only that, but also with Mud Bomb you get extra coverage for Lantern, so this team is another ABB team style that you can utilize effectively by safe switching and aggressively doing so to your Mandibuzz. Draw out the Lantern, draw out the Steel type, and then finish it off with your Quagsire. Then Skarmory most likely will have no other weakness, and with this team I do not think that you have anything else to worry about. Even up against a fighter, do not stay in there with your Quagsire, switch out to your Mandibuzz and follow the same strategy. This team is absolutely strong, and if played right, I think it has zero weakness at all. So it's all up to you, use it and you will see what I mean. Now Skeledirge is a very nice Pokemon to use, and I'm gonna use it here as an unorthodoxic line, because we're gonna have Skeledirge on the lead, while at the back a grass type with Bassodon will form a perfect backline. So we're looking at a team that gets some mediocre ranks here on PvP, but we are not here for that. Ranks and the meta scoreboard never tell the whole story. Once again heading into the potential threats, which are the core breakers, and the reason I'm always mentioning this is because some people do not know this, so pardon me. And now let's see what we have over here. So with Skeledirge you are pretty much afraid of rock types and not so much of the ground ones, because with the grounds you can still apply some pressure with your Incinerates, with your Disarming Voices, or even the Shadow Ball, but up against something like a Bassodon or a Carbink, well, these two can absolutely be devastating to you. However, here is what you can do. Safe switching to your Serperior can absolutely be a menace for a lot of teams. This Pokemon has access to Aerial Ace for the fighters, or even Plant for the rocks, and even up against a Bassodon those Plants are still gonna hurt. I really think you should give this team a shot, because by keeping Bassodon for the very end game you can have quite the healthiest environment ever to have the upper hand over your opponent. Also, Skeledirge and Serperior can protect your Bassodon from those fighters, which is pretty great, and I like this sandwich team. You have a Pokemon that is afraid of the fighters, it is afraid of the Mud Boys, but at the same time the Serperior can cover for that weakness, while Skeledirge might be struggling against the Mud Boys, but still can have a chance if played correctly, with its Incinerates able to charge up its charge attacks fairly fast. Now with the next team showcase we meet up with a Cresselia team. Clodsire on the lead, Mandibuzz as a safe switch, and of course Cresselia will emerge here like a closer with its other moveset of Moonblast and Grass Knot. However, this team gets a lot of great grades, and I said however because whenever we see those grades this team will never perform that well. But let's see it in action here on the core breaking stuff as we are utilizing Clodsire up in front. So Clodsire is a Pokemon that has access to a unique moveset of Stone Edge and Earthquake, two pretty huge nukes for the meta, and even when you're facing something like an Abomasnow, you can see here Articuno, okay, you can still have a chance up against those Pokemon. The only severe threat that I could find for this team is gonna be Skarmory. So if I were you and I was having Skarmory up in front, I would try to stay in there with my Clodsire. It is still gonna be kinda of a soft win. You can already tell here here on the individual battle, that if we go all in, we are gonna leave that Skarmory on the 1 shield scenario with just 24 HP, which is absolutely farmable by our Mandibuzz, for example. So this is not the end of the world or anything. This is absolutely playable for your Clodsire by sacrificing just 1 shield in the process. And with that Pokemon out of the way, both Mandibuzz and Cresselia will most likely have no other weakness at the back, and knowing the meta, most of those people are gonna have a fighter, so at some point you will at least have a positive scenario, and even up against a very bad lead, you can always have a chance. This is absolutely awesome. This team can absolutely work. Also the backline, actually not the backline, Clodsire and Cresselia can protect your Mandibuzz from Lantern and other electric type Pokemon, and this is why I love this team. It has a lot of play against most threats. Now on the next team showcase, we're meeting up with a Poliwrath, Bastiodon and Trevenant team. This is another unusual line for Bastiodon. I'm never gonna showcase something like a Shadow Victory Bell on my best teams video, and instead I'm just gonna try to find alternative ways to make Bastiodon a fun pick for Great League. As you can see here, we still get some pretty nice marks, and overall, well, this team is losing to Nidoqueen. Okay, not that much of a big deal, okay, because Nidoqueen is not gonna be around that much. You can always count on your Trevenant for that Pokemon, or just go ahead and throw a couple of Icy Winds and still you can manage against Nidoqueen. Just avoid Bastiodon with that matchup. So overall, another severe threat that I could find about this line might be something like a Gligar, but if you have a non-Shadow Poliwrath, you can still provide extra pressure with your Icy Winds by surviving right after the RLA is much easier, and of course you can easily get 2 shields out of play, and after all of those debuffs, Bastiodon will actually be able to farm down without spending any shield at all. So this team looks fantastic. I think that it has no severe weakness, everything is playable, even a Gligar up in front, even a Nidoqueen, so that Poliwrath makes up for its lost Scald this season. Even though you're gonna use it on this team, I really think that you should consider replacing Scald permanently with something like a Dynamic Punch, because it is gonna help you a ton. Now we're heading into the final team showcase, as we're having one of my favorite teams over here. Empoleon, Trevenant and Wigglytuff can emerge here like a perfect team to encounter the whole meta of Great League. This is a team that I was not expecting to work, but last time I used it on the previous Great League rotation, it did. What you want to do here is to aggressively, and always do that, aggressively switch into Wigglytuff, draw out something like a fire type Pokemon, try to do your best with the charms and debuff it all the way, while your Empoleon might actually finish it off with a simple Hydro Cam later on. With that in mind, Empoleon can also protect your backline from those Skarmories, and Trevenant will really appreciate this. So Trevenant and Empoleon are the solid core, while Wigglytuff is gonna remain as a perfect safe switch. So what you want to do with Wigglytuff is to draw out those Pokemon, finish them off with Charm and of course the Hydro Cannons from Empoleon, so that Trevenant will have no other weakness to be afraid of. What I found out to be a solid core breaker though is gonna be something like a Berserker. We are never gonna find this Pokemon in action, at least not twice in a single set, because it is super rare to encounter it. But besides that, you can always count on your combined efforts of the other Pokemon, and whatever you face, well, you can always have a chance with this team. Even up against the Registeel, Empoleon can really hold on its own because of its amazing Hydro Cannon power and Steel Wing being its fast attack. So I really like this team, I really recommend to you, and that is gonna be the end to today's content. Before you go, leave a huge like, subscribe to my content here on YouTube, and if you want to see more, here are more videos for you. Thank you for watching, trainers, and I hope to see you all into the next one.